Aunjanue. How are you?
Alright, how you doing? What's this jacket you got on? I like that green.
Oh, thank you. It's from the movie Maxine.
Oh my
So
God,
it says Maxine on the side.
where's our merch, man? This thing got what's going on here?
Uh, to start, I do think every time I interview you, I'm in the middle, I'm like out in public, but I'm always like, I need to talk to Aunjanue about this movie that she was in. Because I think this movie is so beautiful and has so many layers to it. But I really love the framing devices of, this grandmother in the 60s versus what we see of Elwood in the 80s. And I think that the use of those two time periods are so fascinating, especially later in the movie. When you are representative of a specific time period in a movie that does span so many decades, does that bring with it an extra layer to you as an actor, or are you just focused on where that character is in that journey?
Yeah, yeah, what the last thing that you said. Yeah. I think if you start thinking about what you're doing, the if you start thinking about what you're doing in the macro, you get in your head, you know,
Mhm.
and I think what you do becomes less interest, less dangerous. And I think that when people watch people on screen, they want to feel like there's something at stake, you know, which makes us that's why we want to engage. So yeah, I didn't want to get in my head about the situation of the world in either world. I wanted it to be as specific as possible, so I had to like just concentrate on my little moment, my moments with Elwood and Turner.
And I want to ask about the process of this movie because I talked to Ramel and I was talking about how I love the use of the footage of the moon landing because obviously in today's world we know that a lot of the moon landing exists because of the mathematical equations of black women. And so to have the comparison of that versus what was happening to these boys in like schools like this at the
Mhm.
same time is so fascinating. But for you as an actor who are doing specific scenes, you have your moments and you're focused on the character and that's it. How is it when you get to see the final product of something like Nickel Boy and you see all these elements kind of come together when it is a movie that is so like I described it as lyrical, but it is such a like a lyrical story between these boys and what is happening to them. But we as the audience get to experience it as the full picture versus you through the filming process.
Yeah, well, I haven't, excuse me, I'm sorry. I haven't seen the film. I saw minutes of it recently. And what I felt of the few minutes that I saw, um, I'll tell you the story. I'll just tell you a quick story. So we did a screening of it at a school at the school that Ramel teaches at, and I went to school there. And they started to show the film. I was sitting next to Ramel, and I'm watching. I told Ramel I'll watch just a few minutes of it. So the film starts, and all of a sudden Ramel just starts running. And I'm like, where is he going? Right? And so he comes back and he says, some of the sound is missing. But there was sound. There was sound there, but he said some of the sound is not there. So we never could get the film to actually to play. That sound was always missing. It was always missing. And I asked him, I said, what are we missing? And he said, one of the things we're missing is in the background, you hear Hattie and Elwood's mother calling him. We don't hear their voices call him. And I just thought that was so interesting that that he because that we could have watched the film as it was, right? But for him, that you need the voices of the women who loved him. Now I know he's thinking about it in a completely technical way. Do you know what I mean? That this was a speaker problem, it was digital, la 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 la. I have no understanding of any of that. But that's what I heard him say, is that you don't hear Hattie, you don't hear Elwood's mother, and you don't hear Hattie calling his name. So for me, it was what was missing. What were the women, two generations of women who loved Elwood not being present in that moment, you know? I'm trying to bring this back to your question of just that how that figures into the importance of that and the beauty of that. Um, yeah, the voices of these women, and I did forget what your question was.
That's okay, because that was so beautiful. I don't even remember my own question. I was like, that's beautiful. I love it so much. I do want to ask you, which I'm sure you've been asked about the POV, but I want to ask about the vulnerability of acting with a POV camera, because I feel like it is very different when you are the actual POV, but when you are acting opposite it and the camera is directly in your face and you're looking at a camera because you are looking at quote unquote the person that you're talking to has to have a level of vulnerability that I feel like acting naturally has, but that's a whole different level of it. How was it looking straight onto a camera, having a conversation with somebody, but knowing that like we as the audience are going to be seeing every emotion that this woman is feeling in that instance?
Yeah, that's another thing. I had to train myself on the spot, really, and get used to that. This I don't particularly love cameras. I always feel like it's something that's intrusive. So, but I had to make the camera Elwood. I had to make the camera Turner. I had to make it something that I loved. And I guess I just had to try to lean into that as much as I could. But yeah, it was difficult. It was difficult doing that. Difficult and strange because I couldn't touch anybody. I couldn't get any emotional cues from Brandon or Ethan. I couldn't do any of the things that came natural to me. I was denied all of those things. But I think that kind of was appropriate for what Hattie was going through. She was cut off from what she loved. And so I had to experience that a little bit on a very practical way.
Yeah. And for my last question, I want to ask is Hattie has such a unique ability because she has this whimsy to her throughout the movie. And I think a lot of it is because we're seeing the POV for the most part of Elwood and how he views his grandmother. And she kind of has, at one point, she's wearing that white kind of chiffon thing and it moves with her and is very kind of flowy and makes her feel kind of this ethereal being because that's how I think a lot of kids look up to their grandmothers. But
Mhm.
when you are playing a character like that, it feels differently. And so when you are kind of having those moments and you're being that source of comfort for a young boy in this instance or whatever it is, what for you was the biggest challenge of making that comfort come across in the way that you do? Because it is beautiful to watch, but it is like when you stop to think about it, it's kind of like otherworldly. This is how this woman exists in this movie.
Yeah, girl, that's good. What you just asked me is really good. Maybe other people have asked that question, but not like that. That we are seeing his point of how he sees his grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So that may not actually be what was there. It was how he saw her. Which is really that's beautiful. And I kind of never thought about it and never thought about it in that way. Um, I think that I I had a tremendous amount of joy that I wanted to come through the screen. You know, I wanted to show I wanted to show that this child was loved. Because when we know that a child, we should feel this way either way. But when we know that a child is loved, that they're not refuse, right? That they are loved, that they are part of a family, that they are one of us, that the loss of that child is, we feel that even more exponentially. So I wanted to show this child was loved in everything that I did.
And you do it incredibly. It's beautiful to watch. I love this movie very much, and so thank you so much for talking with me. And I can't wait for everyone to get to see it.
Thank you. Thank you for your time and thank you for your question.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Have a great one.
Take care.
Bye.
Take